Hello and most welcome to 1894 of the H series. We will today continue with Francis Y. Lin's Wittgenstein's Private Language Investigation. Last time we went really deeply into the private language problem as such. In the utter depths, we were looking at that there were no inner mechanisms, no external devices that can be utilized by the diarist to tell whether some sensations are of one type or different types. And we also mentioned that this confusion resisted within neurology until very recently. Where sense data, like if you looked at a chair, it would come immediately to your understanding. So the Platonic take was still there until recently, something that had been changed by help by J.J. Gibson, Tono Chimero, and others. Also, Georgi Buzaki, the Hungarian neurologist, take an inside-out turn, where he says what's on the inside is also on the outside, by making very fuzzy or fractal borders between inside and outside, seeing how they go into each other, complement each other, and not being absolute contradictions or oppositions. We could make the text maybe a little bit bigger, 230, something like that, please. Also, interestingly, an old name came up, Roland, Barthes, the Emperor of the Signs. Very enticing, because in the Emperor of the Signs, he looked at, he says, there is no inner meaning in Japan or in what they do. And I think that points clearly to this, them having not been fallen victim to the same degree to the private language argument problem. The idea that there are inner sensations that rule, decides, and in the end confuses, making what we say nonsense. We will now continue after this pretty thorough take on what is private language, and continue on page 278. And we are now into memory, and memory is definitely one of the most difficult subjects, I would say. almost everyone has the idea that you can discern, so to speak, within yourself, your memories with different tapes. This, we are now in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph. And I continue to read. The memory challenge, which plagues all the previous interpretations discussed in this paper, is met by the present interpretation. Memory is not really an issue. Even if the diarist had an infallible memory, so that he could bring the initial sensation clearly and correctly in his mind, when he had a later sensation, he would still have no way to tell whether or not these two sensations are of the same type. No way to set up a practice of using his private names. Early interpreters take Wittgenstein's remarks on private language to expound memory criticism, skepticism. That interpretation consists of two major parts. One, remembering. The connection right is taken to mean identifying correctly later sensations as the same as the initial one. And two, no criterion of correctness is thought to be due to fallible memory. Memory skepticism has long been discredited. Later commentators, except Peirce, in their eagerness to distance themselves from memory skepticism, reject not only two, but also one. My dear. They take remembering the connection right to mean things other than re-identifying sensations. Sensations. This maneuver is, in fact, an overcorrection.
Overcorrection. Baya.
As argued in section 3.1 above, one is correct as long as re-identifying sensations is understood as re-identifying sensation types. But this does not mean that the later commentators are entirely wrong. A point I shall try to make clear now. A major trouble with private language is that a name in it, for instance, S, is supposed to refer to a certain sensation, namely S. As Wittgenstein makes clear, see the later part of section 3.2 above. This supposition is faulty, Mr. Faulty.
Faulty. Faulty. Baja. Mr. Faulty.
Yeah, Mr. Faulty. When the private diarist thinks he has experienced the S sensation again and again, it is actually not decided whether one S sensation has kept occurring or whether many different types of sensations have appeared. In Wittgenstein's words, it is not decided whether the private object to which S is supposed to refer is one object or many different objects. With this in mind, we can understand previous interpretations better and put them into the right perspective. Ray. It is not wrong for Kenny and Hacker to say that the private diarist cannot remember the meaning of S at T2. Candlish and Risley are quite right in thinking that there was no genuine correlation between S and a sensation. Sensation. Canfield does not err in stating that the diarist did not really establish a rule of use for S. Stroud is not mistaken when saying that the meaning of S was not established at the initial baptism. but the explanations these commentators provide are not quite satisfactory. Okay. Sorry. I have to have provided a more satisfactory explanation in this paper. According to sections 3.1 and 3.2 above, the diarist has no criterion of correctness for re-identifying sensation types. In other words, there is no criterion of correctness for the diarist use of the name S. S. This results in a rather peculiar status of S. It cannot be decided whether S refers to one sensation type or many different sensation types. What a conundrum. Thus, the meaning of S is not fixed. Rather, it lacks a meaning. Consequently, the diarist at T1 did not really establish a correlation between S and a sensation. He did not really lay down a rule for using S, and he cannot remember the meaning of S at T2. Peirce is correct in saying that the private diarist has no criterion of correctness for re-identifying sensation types. But he fails to explain why. McGinn and Stroud are right. In stating that a name must be connected with the technique of using it, but they fail to explain why the private diarist cannot set up a private technique of using his private names. Names. Names.
Names. Straudel.
Stroud and Strudel. I hope that the present paper has overcome these deficiencies. Now, Pontus, now.
Oh.
It is the time to answer the questions raised in section 1. First, consider the difficulty with Wittgenstein's remarks on private language.
Language.
Does Wittgenstein say that private language is intelligible, but is impossible, or that private language is intelligible, but impossible, or that private language is incoherent and senseless? And I put in a coherency there. This paper shows that Wittgenstein is very clear on the issue. That latter is true. The idea of private language is senseless, and private language is a grammatical illusion. Illusion. So, and I think, so private language is also impossible, but the impossibility is not empirical, rather it is grammatical, logical. Now, consider the difficulty with the consistency between Wittgenstein's conception of philosophy and his practice. In dealing with private language, does Wittgenstein only present grammatical facts? Which everyone agrees to, or does he make some theoretical claims? This paper shows that the former is the case. Private language is grammatically impossible. And this is due to no criterion of correctness, none whatsoever. that the proposition that there is no criterion of, of correctness for the private diarist use of S looks like a theoretical thesis. But once sufficiently explained, everybody would agree to it. There's no need for Wittgenstein to resort to any controversial theoretical claims. For instance, that the truth of past tense propositions is governed by present tense criteria, or that rule following and language require a community of speakers.
A community of speakers.
Speakers! There is thus no inconsistency between Wittgenstein's conception and practice of philosophy, at least in the case of private language. He does not argue that private language is incoherent and impossible. He only shows, by reminding us of the facts about the use of words such as name and language, that private language is a grammatical fiction. Fiction. His investigation of private language is a grammatical one. Hence the title of the present paper. And then the article all of a sudden ends. We've reached the end. So let's go for some quotes here. Let's see here. We go to page, thank you very much, 278. And let me repeat what stands in front of our eyes here, and that is, if you go down a bit, I think it's good to remember that the second thesis, the two theses stated here that's on the screen now, are very good to remember. They are helpful in further reading of Wittgenstein, I'd say. And as a repetition, there are no inner mechanism, nor any external device that will help us in this private language. It is not that they empirically do not exist. It's just sheer nonsense to say that they exist. Because you cannot answer the question, what are they? Or what could they be? Are they one? Are they 100? How do you differ them? So it's a cornucopia of problems here. If we go further down and start what we're reading. So we have here that the memory challenge. So even if he had an infallible memory, he wouldn't be able to tell one sensation from the other. There simply wouldn't be a criterion. This is incredibly close to Derrida's difference. His deepening understanding that the Saussurean difference between different signs or signs for cannot be told apart only by difference. Difference is needed. I now make a pronunciation difference, but you get the Derridian difference, which is different from itself. You go to the next paragraph, the early interpreters, which is at the bottom of the screen now. So early interpreters of Wittgenstein take Wittgenstein's remarks to be expounding memory skepticism. But memory is not the issue. Even if the essayist or the diarist had an incredible memory, there would be no criterion whatsoever, there couldn't be one, to tell one sensation off from another one. There cannot be. And I think in here, different so-called even worse fault you can make is like you start imagining a panopticon or from the inside a sort of a homunculus that helps you in your understanding of same and different. It doesn't make any sense at all. No one says that. So if we go further down to the end of that paragraph, up a bit, there, yeah. And here is a very important note from Ling, but the very last sentence here. But this does not mean that the later commentators are entirely wrong. And this is important. We have use of them, and we have used many of these interpreters before. It's a subtlety, it's a nuance we're after, not that the other ones are completely wrong. That's not at all the point of Lin. They are actually quite helpful. I'd say without McGinn, without Strouder, it wouldn't be possible for Ling to be where he's at. We can go to page 279, the next one. The first sentence here, in Wittgenstein's words, it is not decided whether the private object to which S is supposed to refer is one object or many different objects. With this in mind, we can understand previous interpretations better and put them into the right perspective. And here is a reinforcement of my previous claim. This claim, they are not entirely wrong. None of them, neither Kenny, Hacker, Candish, or Risley, or Canfield, or Stroud, are not entirely wrong. And that's part of the point here. We go down to Stroud, which is Stroud, which on the 6th or 5th line Stroud is not mistaken when saying that the meaning of S was not established at the initial baptism. So, and that is, of course, against the Augustinian ostensive definition, or rule number 2, all bachelors are unmarried. You cannot follow one rule only one time. It is a progression. Meaning is the top of the iceberg of steps, stage setting, and gazillions of iterations. Gazillions. And if you go further down here, at the end, it's a rather difficult sentence. It needs humor and it needs cheering up. Consequently, the diarist at T1 did not really establish a correlation between S and the sensation. He did not really lay down a rule for using S, and he cannot remember the meaning of S at T2. This is actually linear time taken up by, amongst others, Julian Barber, and shown to be nonsensical rather than empirically wrong. It doesn't make sense to have time on the washing line. It doesn't solve the problem we are facing here with identifying a sensation. Go further down to the paragraph that starts with now. Here comes the important question that was stated already in the beginning. Does Wittgenstein say that private language is intelligible but impossible, or that private language is incoherent and senseless? It is, of course, the latter that's true. It doesn't make any sense. You will not be understood. If you go further down, so private language is also impossible. But the impossibility is not empirical, but rather is grammatical or logical. So no matter of technical development, no matter of looking into the brains of the people listening to lectures will actually tell whether they like the lecture or not, or how they responded to it. Remember the manometer. All those things are logically impossible. And here we have a restatement. In dealing with private language, does Wittgenstein only present grammatical facts which everyone agrees to, or does he make some theoretical claims? Very important here. I almost get serious here, with a laughter. But no, only grammatical facts. Nothing that anyone can have any objection to. Private language is grammatically impossible, and there are no criterion whatsoever of correctness. Therein lies the problem. It doesn't put forward an opinion. Add a new theory about language, the world, neither does he expound a new philosophy, none of those things. So on the last page here, 280. There's no need for Wittgenstein to resort to any controversial theoretical claims. For instance, as we tried out before, the truth of past tense preposition is governed by present tense criteria. Or that rule following and language require a community of speakers. None of those. We can expound and we can understand the problem just by thinking hard enough, or rather, I would say shallow enough. I think that's maybe more fitting. Kalle, I know you were anxious to come in.
Let's go to previous page 279 and do the same phrase that you mentioned. In dealing with private language, does Wittgenstein only present grammatical facts with which everyone agrees to, or does he make some theoretical claims? This paper shows that the former is the case. I'm not so certain about this, because this would mean that Wittgenstein is excluding the empirical world. But not even Lean does exclude the empirical world when he argues. Let me give you an example, which happens to be my favorite phrase in this paper, and that's Lean's phrase. So, what can you guess my favorite phrase here? It's okay. It's not this one, but another phrase.
I remember there was. Well, that was a good one as well, as you took forward there.
But let me take this one. One reason is that at these two times, the positions of my eyes are highly unlikely to be completely the same. So are the lighting conditions. Here, you actually have an empirical fact. So Lean himself uses empiricism to prove his points. So you cannot say exclude the empirical world, because Lean himself uses the empirical world.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's not only a grammatical. So it's not only grammatical. This is my disagreement with Lean.
Yeah. They say sometimes, I don't know if this is helpful, science, Wittgenstein, and also one of his followers, Feyerabend, they are true science. They defend science and the empirical, if you like. But they are against what I think has been dubbed scientism. And scientism is the idea that things in the world are not, how can you say, they are not criterions for correctness, as Lean stated here. The things in the world are just out there. So they don't help us in our language, or they don't help us in discerning red from, for instance, yellow.
Not completely, because nevertheless, Lean does use empirical illustrations, because it's actually our eyes that is able to discern what is green and what is red. So I would not say that it's possible actually to separate the empirical proofs. But anyhow, so let's but let's leave that. So anyhow, this is a very significant point by Lean.
Oh yeah. It's
and
I would say it's actually a defense of the real world. It's a defense of science as the discovery process.
So let's say that somebody says that I don't know, this is perhaps to go too far, but let's say I am my own God. I have my private religion, but the God tomorrow and today is not the same, because you wouldn't be able to say, because the position of your eyes are highly unlikely to become the same for the lighting conditions. But I think we need a bit.
The chance is 1 in a gazillion. And that argument was really helpful for me. It was like getting a slap over my face. So
You
Lynn was
actually,
really sharp there with the eyes. It helped me.
so you have a kind of false quantum physics in your private, or rather, you have if you have private language, you actually keep in the classical physics point of view, because you say that your card today is the same as the one tomorrow. That is the only way of you saying it's the same.
Yeah.
Because S stands for sameness, I would say, in this case. So, so I think this is a very important point. So if somebody says that I have my own card, so that means that today your card is the same as tomorrow. So there is a sameness. The sameness is only allowed by classical physics. And that you are immobile, actually. It also implies that you must be completely immobile, which is also an impossibility.
Yeah. There's such an interesting parallel here. I'm making it more complex now, not helping, but Julian Barber doesn't say that classical physics is wrong, but that some aspects of it, very similar to the S1 and S2, are nonsensical. They simply don't make sense. Which was exactly the same thing that Leibniz said, as you brought up a couple of lectures ago. So it's very good. We get connections here.
Yes, I think it's a good realization. So somebody says next time, okay, so I have my own card, and then you must be classical physicist in this case, because then you assume sameness. Sameness is possible, but in quantum physics, sameness is never possible.
Exactly.
Let me also, yes, please, Hans.
Yeah, sure. At least not in the classical sense, which is nonsensical. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree. Definitely.
And let me conclude with my favorite footnote. You already know that, I think.
Oh yeah, I like it as well.
Let me see,
Bring it on, Kalle.
I know. I know. Oh, here. No, it's not this one. No, it's the. Or you have Manometer actually 2 footnotes. Manometer. It's footnote 65. Let me put it a little bigger. So it's my favorite footnote 65. PI 265 describes a similar case when the diarist claims that he is having an S sensation. A manometer shows that his blood pressure goes up, as Wittgenstein points out. It will not make any difference if the diarist makes mistakes, whether or not the diarist is indeed having an S sensation. As long as he claims that he is, the manometer will show the rise of his blood pressure. The manometer will not be able to tell whether or not an S sensation is occurring. So what is happening here? So manometer, okay, let's say that then I say, I have God here, and then later on I say God here, and you have a manometer. Of course, your blood pressure will go up because you're excited. You think you have God here, God here.
Yeah, that's it.
And you also imply also that you assume that there is sameness possible.
Yeah, somehow.
In somehow, this is not possible. So this, so I think this helped much. This manometer.
Yeah, it's a very good one. And to be honest here, when my professor a couple of months ago said this, that you can use, let's say, a manometer, because it would work equally well, to tell whether the listener to a lecture appreciated the lecture or not. I didn't like it. I knew it was somehow something weird with it, but not until I read this paper, I got my arguments or my understanding clearer. He's proposed, my teacher, my professor did propose a manometer, and that will tell whether the students, the listener to a lecture, wouldn't like the lecture or not. It's a pretty massive admission from my side, but I not until now. So I'm so happy about this article.
So in conclude, I could actually say that so the title of this paper, Berlin, Wittgenstein's private language investigation, or rather, so I think Lean, he's on the borderline, as I told you in the past episodes. He's in the borderline between an analytical philosopher and a continental philosopher. He's analytical in the sense he tries to dismiss empiricism, but he's continental philosopher when he actually uses proofs for empiricism to prove his points. So he's contradictory, this Francis Valin, but he's excellent, but he doesn't know his own weakness, which is also his perhaps his strong point also.
Francis is a bit like a duck rabbit.
Yes, it's like when you had this Wittgenstein. No. This is, I think this metaphor is better. Wittgenstein had this metaphor somewhere that you give with one hand, but you do something with your left hand, but your right hand doesn't know what you're doing. So, and Francis Valin actually has this that he, with his right hand, he sometimes uses empiricism to prove his points, and this is the strong right hand. But then he, in his conclusions, he doesn't take in consideration empiricism.
No.
So the right hand does great things with empiricism, but then his left hand dismisses them. By claiming primacy for grammatical rules, he thinks that language should be the foremost criterion. But I don't think that's possible in real life. And
yeah, very great. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a bit quantum mechanical.
And I could, since I'm speaking, we had this example also with the green red. He says that it's impossibility, and both. So he says it's an illusion, that this color would be an illusion. Yes, and my proposal was that we should use the word superposition instead, because illusion is very negative.
I do agree that green red is a superposition sort of spell, and I think with the addition to this text or this sentences here, you can say you can only think or speak of green or red, but green red is not like an illusion. It is rather a superposition. Very good, Kalle. I like that. Yeah.
Okay, let's end there. Hallelujah. We have ended another
Thank you very
party.
much. It was great. Many revelations coming from this text, without a doubt. And
I think this was the third paper by Lynn that we have went through. Can it be correct?
Third or fourth?
Yes.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yes, I
tried to contact him. I haven't heard anything yet. I will try to better my trimment. See if I manage. Well,
yes,
thank you very much. Sorry.
No, we went through 2 papers from 2021.
Yeah.
2 papers from 2021. Then we went back in time, and then a third paper from 2019, and this paper from 2017. 2016. This copyright year is 2016. This is the oldest paper so far. Anyhow, so here you have the 2017. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Kalle, for your excellent comments. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. Your support is invaluable. Have a very pleasant morning, day, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you.